It's Fighter Renegades, a Star Wars podcast.
It is time for TIE Fighter Renegades, the Star Wars show on Zomia ONE. And baby, you are being joined by none other than the man of tomorrow, Brian Sovryn, and of course his dear friend and brother, always ready to talk up some Star Wars, really science fiction in general. We got to start talking up some Star Trek here at some point too, but this is a Star Wars show, goddammit. Being joined by Robin Freebeard. Robin, man, as always, great to have you on.
Thank you for having me. I always love being here.
Yeah, no, this is actually, we got an email. In fact, I have to pull that up. We'll get to it a little later on. We got an email of somebody that just really loved, this show. I mean, they were, out of all the things on Zomia ONE, they were really digging this. In fact, it inspired them to do something that, well, I think we're going to have a little bit of a question around, which has to do with books, during our question of the month. But we have a lot of news to get in for August of 2019 because, of course, D23 just happened, and there was really even plenty of news outside of that, some of which we'll probably save for September. Not that I expect the news to slow down much in September, but we really do have a lot to get into, a lot to talk about with the comic books. We got a lot of trailers to cover. Of course, we're going to talk about The Mandalorian, the Obi-Wan show, I mean, we had, and of course, there's that some interesting footage from episode 9 that we have to get into, and I mean, there's a whole slew to get in. So, shall we get rocking, Rob?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. So we'll open it up with a little bit of news that I found a little bit surprising. We're going to be talking about comics here right out in the right out front. And well, first off, how have you been feeling? We got a new writing team in the main Star Wars comic. How have you been feeling about the main Star Wars comic since the new writing team came on board?
It's been okay. I mean, not a whole lot has happened, so it's kind of a bit of a slow start, in my opinion. But
right.
I don't dislike what I've seen so far. The art is definitely a huge improvement.
Yeah, absolutely.
Certainly not as strong as some of the other comic books we'll talk about. But it is definitely a big improvement over the tracing that we've been getting in previous series.
Yeah, which we've ripped on pretty hard over the past few months because it was ridiculous. I mean, just how much they were clearly tracing over film cells, more or less.
Right.
It was really bad, which that fortunately has stopped. Yeah, I mean, I've been digging what's been happening in the series so far. Again, not a lot has happened, but there wasn't anything necessarily bad or to the negative going on. But interestingly, we have news. This might have been announced just before D23, but they are going to be ending the Star Wars ongoing comic with issue 75, which is just about 5 issues away from now. So I guess in about 5 months, that will come to an end, and that's going to leave Dr. Aphra as the only regular ongoing Star Wars comic standing. Now, I mean, I'll just say this, and maybe you thought the same thing, Rob. I think just like they did with Darth Vader when you had Darth Vader Volume 1, it was pretty short order that they came out with Darth Vader Volume 2. And
exactly.
And I think basically they're just going to have a Star Wars Volume 2 come out in pretty short order. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised, though, if the new ongoing just comic with the title Star Wars is post Episode 9. That would not surprise me if they did that, if they wanted it to continue there.
Right.
From the main saga. I don't know that this is necessarily them just like trying to save face, because I very rarely see anything positive said about the previous, or really about the first 60 some odd issues of the Star Wars ongoing comic. So I don't know if they're trying to save face and say, look, this isn't the Star Wars comic you've been reading before. Of course, it's also very popular to just come out with number 1s whenever you can, and try and reinvigorate some sales. That might be going on.
I think that's
all of that.
Go ahead. I think that's the main thrust of it. This is just, the Marvel's business model for, the last, 10 years is sell as many issue 1s as you can. And especially makes sense with Star Wars, because I think Star Wars issue number 1 still holds like the top spot for best-selling single issue comic in their history right now.
Would that be the original from way back in what, 78?
No,
Or
I'm
you mean the
talking
most
about,
recent one?
yes, the
Okay.
issue 1 of the current series that's going to be ending was issue 75. I think issue 1 has sold more copies than anything else that they've sold in recent history.
That's a pretty interesting metric. So yeah, I could believe that too. Um, yeah, I mean, selling, like, I can't even count how many times, and not that DC does any better as far as this goes. I mean, I can't count how many times I've bought an Iron Man #1 or a Fantastic Four #1 or whatever. You know, I mean, they're countless, ironically, and
Right.
it's annoying as hell because then they'll just renumber shit later on. And in fact, a comic we're not going to review, like you have Marvel #1000, and or like Action Comics and Detective Comics at DC, they both celebrated issue 1000 recently, even though they have, both of those series have gone through renumberings in the past. So it's very clearly a sales tactic. So frankly, this is barely even news, I guess, is that the Star Wars ongoing comic is ending. Woo, like you think there isn't going to be a Star Wars comic? Are you kidding me? So anyway, but yeah, I agree with you. The series has been, safe, but not bad as late. So any other thoughts on that one, Rob?
No, like I said, you pretty much hit the nail on the head with that. I don't think we'll have to wait very long for Volume 2 to come out. But I don't think that they're going to get the sales numbers that they're expecting on issue 1 that they're hoping for.
Yeah. I mean, I think the only way they could, I'll tell you, is if Rey's on the cover of it. That's why I'm wondering if they're going to do something post 9. If you put Rey on the cover, you might sell a lot. You might push a lot of issues. I don't know, but that's just a theory.
We'll see.
Yeah. So anyway, well, we certainly do have comics that are hovering around the era of Episode 9, or at least what's known as the Age of Resistance. We got 2 of them. Another 2, of course, the one I think that everybody's really waiting for, or at least a lot of the more hardcore fans are wanting to find out about, Snoke. That has yet to release. I don't even, just a quick comment on the Snoke comic. Like, if that character really means nothing, why be so fucking secretive and why hold back on all this shit? It's really driving me nuts. So I don't know what to make of that, but it's there. Anyway, what we did get is we got a Hux, General Hux comic, and we got a comic with Poe Dameron. Starting off with the Hux comic, what did you make of this one, Rob? I mean, I think it took place. This is pre-Force Awakens when this one takes place, right? But I mean, what was your gauge?
I mean, I come in it with the bias because I have to say that General Hux is probably my least favorite character of the sequel trilogy, if not all of Star Wars together.
Whoa! Wow, that's bold.
Yeah,
that's bold. Okay.
The character is really quite meaningless in my opinion, and this comic really didn't improve that opinion about him. It didn't really make him any more interesting, or even more of a mystery. I mean, if they had, even raised more questions about him or done something, that put a new light on him. But really, we didn't see anything in there that I don't think we could have gathered from the last 2 movies that we got with him.
Yeah, I mean, I do appreciate that they drove home that he killed his dad, because I think most people don't know that. Even though I think it was mentioned in one of the Aftermath trilogy books, I think is where maybe that came up.
Yeah, I think it came up in the second book, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, so, and I mean, then there's that great interaction with Ray Sloan that happens in that. It's one of the few highlights of those books. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I did like his line, you think I'm weak. No, I'm just patient. And he's just this really like conniving guy. But I agree with you. It didn't add anything really to the character. There's nothing terribly exciting here. It was a pretty dry read. I mean, I thought. So I don't disagree with you on that. You want to go to the Poe Dameron one?
Yeah, I actually really enjoyed the Poe Dameron comic. I like that we got to see him before he joined the Resistance. In fact, how he didn't necessarily get like an official introduction to the Resistance, but it was kind of opened his horizons to what was going on in the galaxy.
Yeah, I know a lot of people complain about the opening sequence in The Last Jedi where he does the phone call trick with Hux.
Right.
I thought that was damn funny. Like, I
Yeah.
remember laughing my ass off in theaters when he did that. And you kind of, in this comic, which takes place before Force Awakens, you find out where he learns this trick of stalling.
Right. And I think it's kind of, it's appropriate where he gets it from, too, because, I mean, Admiral Holdo, or Vice Admiral Holdo, as she's in this comic, was always kind of a quirky character. At least she was in the Princess Leia novel. And I'm glad we got to see some of that.
Yeah, I thought it was great to have her in it. What a nice reveal. Like, I mean, that was a good zinger right at the end. And then not only her, but because there's a comment made when they're flying through that asteroid field where she says, you know, I'm commanding one of the best pilots in the galaxy. You're like, well, who the hell's that? And then you find out it's Nien Nunb, and I'm like, fuck yeah, it is, baby. You know, which is so cool because that guy's just, you know, he's there and he's hilarious. So yeah, that worked for me. I thought that was so brilliant. And of course, Nien Nunb does have a long history in the recent Marvel comics with, you know, people of Alderaan, you know, Princess Leia and so on. So that fit. And I thought that was a nice touch. I enjoyed that comic as well. Poe Dameron, do you think he, you know, I know we did a question of the month once where they, like, you know, we talked about what are the best characters of the sequel trilogy, and would you put Poe Dameron as I think we had different answers, but just overall, I feel like Poe Dameron is about the closest thing we have to a great character from these movies. What do you think?
Oh, I agree. I mean, you know, if I recall, my answer was Finn, wasn't it?
Yeah,
and it was mostly because of the you know,
Force Awakens.
Force Awakens. I kind of felt like they let that character down in The Last Jedi, but you know, I still think his character has a lot of potential, and I'm actually more excited to see what they have in store for him in The Rise of Skywalker. But yeah, I mean, like, Poe Dameron is a solid character. I mean, he's definitely up there. If it wasn't Finn, I would say Poe would be number 2.
Yeah, I think just overall writing and handling, even though I don't think anyone was really handled well in The Last Jedi, in my own opinion. But overall, I mean, he's probably the strongest thing they have going, and we're just lucky that they didn't kill him off like was originally planned in the beginning of Force Awakens.
Right. I think he's been the most well-treated character and material outside of the movies, too.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's strong enough to have his own comic series, which that comic series we reviewed on the show, we thought it was fine. It was a very good comic series.
Yeah, it was very good.
Yeah.
I was actually kind of sad when they stopped doing it, because at the point they were doing it, I was kind of actually wanting more. Right. I wasn't of that opinion when they first started the comic, but by the end of it, I had actually really enjoyed the run.
Yeah, absolutely. So this Age of Resistance, the Poe Dameron comic, I dare say it might be the best Age of Resistance comic so far that has come out. I don't know. I enjoyed it, and I thought the Holdo reveal and Nien Nunb reveal at the end was just such a great hook that you didn't really see coming. I mean, you expected somebody from the Resistance, but you didn't see that, and it was well done.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So Dr. Aphra, now are you caught up on this one? Or
I am.
Yeah. This comic, boy, it goes up and down.
It does.
Issue by issue.
Yeah. Well, I personally, I feel like we're on an upswing right now.
I agree. Yep. I agree.
I'm really enjoying the current storyline. I'm really enjoying the art. I think the art in the last few episodes has been phenomenal. Probably some of the best stuff they've put out since Thrawn.
Yep, I agree with that. And I mean, we have Tolvin back. 000's out of the picture right now.
Yep.
A lot of our
out.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of our main complaints over the past few months have really phased out over the past couple months, with these recent issues. And it's just picking up steam. And I think it's such a fun comic, such a joy to read. Do you think it's, just in case, if it were the only ongoing comic series, I mean, do you feel it's strong enough to, like, kind of carry the Star Wars comic line?
For me, it is personally. Now, whether or not
Hmm.
it's strong enough for like the wider like Star Wars consuming audience, I don't know if that's true. I mean, I don't even know if we even have numbers on how well Afra does, but I mean, it's still going, so it must be popular enough to keep it running.
Right.
Yeah, I definitely think it could hold it. I mean, if that's all they have, and so far as going as ongoing series, in an interim between volume one and the supposed volume two of the Star Wars main comic, I definitely think it could carry it for a couple of months.
Yeah, I mean, and it's amazing that with this character, who's a totally new character, only been in the comic books, that she can rein in Luke Skywalker with a hilarious love interest story,
Hmm.
which I think they could do a lot more with. Also, now I mean, Vader, of course, is where her whole history started. So Vader's a part of it. The Emperor is now getting, kind of reined in, in her sphere of influence, as it were. And this storyline that's running with now with like this propagandist that has taken an interest, like this imperial propaganda machine that has taken an interest in Afra. I'm just amazed at how well this story just like I'm like, yeah, of course the Empire would have this sort of thing, and of course this would be going on, and so
Right,
yeah, I'm
right.
surprised at how well it's picked back up and what it's running with, and it's very unique.
And not
Never real. Go ahead.
and not only that, I mean, I really love that they introduced General Kraken into a character in this comic
Ah,
because he's someone, from the old days who never really got a whole lot of attention outside of the West End Games RPG.
mhm.
And the fact that now he's an actual like, character we're getting to see interactions with, that's really cool because before really all we I mean like even his scene from Return of the Jedi was deleted. He was
Right.
originally one of the going to be one of the gunners on the Millennium Falcon during the Death Star run, and he got cut out.
Ah,
But for a long time, like in fact, they put out uh, several books in the West End RPG that were like Kraken's field reports and Kraken's dossier on criminal elements and stuff like that, and you got all these like reports from him on stuff going on throughout the Star Wars galaxy, and it was so cool. And now that we actually have them as a character, we get to see some of his personality. I really like that a lot.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And the other thing that really shocked me with the Afra series. This is such a simple but brilliant thing. Yeah, the Rebel Alliance had the plans for the Death Star. Why the fuck? Why didn't they ever try to make their own?
Right.
And or like something, even if it's just a smaller scale. Like, why didn't they try to make one of those turbo lasers onto Mon Calamari cruiser of some kind, an M80 or whatever, or MC80, whatever they call those. Uh, and this gets into that. It's like, no, actually, they did try. To do something along those lines, and I just thought there was such a simple thing that I never considered, and I just thought it was brilliant. So yeah, I'm having a lot of fun with that comic book.
Not only that,
Any,
it gives you a view of this Rebel Alliance that you kind of got a little bit in Rogue One, in that like the Rebel Alliance isn't this monolithic organization with Mon Mothma at the top. There,
right.
there are factions. There are people with different ideas about how they should be fighting the Empire, and they're going about doing their own things. Maybe she doesn't necessarily know even what's going on. So I'm glad we're getting that too.
Yeah, it makes me think there needs to be some kind of huge event that occurs between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. That would be an awesome story, I'm sure, for Disney to tell, that finally really unites the Alliance, because it feels like right now, between A New Hope and ESB, that this is a very fractionized, very factionized organization, that
Right.
it's a miracle they can get anything done.
Right.
And
I,
I'd love to see what the event is. Go ahead.
I agree, and I even have. If anybody from Marvel is listening, I have the perfect idea for it. You guys need to do a Harrison Duel comic
Ooh,
and make that the focus of it.
yeah, make her the big hero. Yeah,
Yes.
I agree. I agree. Um, Her inclusion in just about everything. I mean, even the Alphabet Squadron, all this stuff. I mean, has just been. I've been very impressed at how much they've really used that character. I
Yeah.
mean, they spared no expense, and rightfully so. She's a great character. She's
Yeah.
really,
But she definitely ups the ante of everything she's in. She's almost kind of like the Rebels version of the Emperor in that sense. That
yeah.
You know,
Yeah, I mean,
like I said, I even made the comic when we reviewed Alpha Squadron that her inclusion that definitely brought the thing up. It didn't save the book, but it certainly made it better.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, she really has come off of. I mean, I know in episodes of TFR past, you've said like she felt like the mother of the Rebels crew.
Yeah.
She's really outside of Leia. She's become like the mother of the Alliance in a very real way. I mean, and they always treat her with like or the writers, creators, and everybody, characters within the stories treat her with such reverence. I think that's so fantastic.
Right, which is exactly why I think she'd be so well suited for that kind of storyline.
Yeah, I'm dying to see her and Leia in a mission together, like, you know, just kicking ass and doing the business. You know, I think that would work really, really well. But anyway, we'll see. Yeah, but I think that's a great idea. I'm with you on that. So actually, speaking of Alphabet Squadron, if you want to get into our last bit of comic book news, we're going to do a little bit of a review on the TIE Fighter series. You up for that?
Let's do it.
All right. So this is a 5-issue miniseries that started, I guess, in April. It was really to prime you supposedly to prime you for the Alphabet Squadron book by Alexander Freed, which came out in June and we reviewed in last month's TIE Fighter Renegades. While the book, Alphabet Squadron, which is meant to be a trilogy, we talked about all that, while the book itself we weren't terribly pleased with, despite Hera being there and so on. The comic book of the TIE Fighter comic book, which originally we talked about it, we were really excited when the news came out. But then, and it is clear when you read this 5-issue miniseries, this is definitely tied into Alphabet Squadron,
right.
Or because it has to deal with Shadow Wing, which is kind of the villain of the Alphabet Squadron book. While the first couple issues, I was feeling I was like, oh no, this is going to be where, we have a defector. And so this is really a comic book about good guys and not about bad guys, which is what I wanted out of a TIE Fighter comic, is showing the quote unquote bad guys, the Empire, as being at least heroes in their own minds. By come issue 5, you know, I felt like we got that. I thought the art in this was great. Once you get to like issue 3, 4, and 5, I think the story is actually really solid. The characters are fairly solid. I enjoyed this, and I was worried that I wasn't going to at all, but I ended up, come issue 5, I was really digging this. How did you feel about the TIE Fighter miniseries?
I was pretty much along the same lines. I was kind of worried by issue, 1 that we were going to get a sort of Battlefront 2-esque sort of story. Which
you get the defectors.
Yeah, exactly. So and not only in Battlefront 2 were they defectors, but it happened early on in the story.
Way too early.
Right, exactly. Whereas we were kind of led to believe that we were going to get an Empire-focused story for the majority of the time. But by the end of the issue, they stuck with it. And being in the Empire and held on to that conviction.
Yeah, and those TIE Fighter pilots thinking they are heroes against the Republic or against the Alliance at the time.
Right.
Well, wait.
Right.
Yeah, because this takes place right at Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, even the one character who was sort of like questioning things and saying maybe the rebels have some legitimate grievances. By the end was like, we joke about how the character grandmother calls the rebel separatists, but she's really not wrong, is she?
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's the character of Ganem, who, again, all these characters I thought, now we did end up having a defector. There was a character as Zin, who's in love with the character you were just describing. But she gets very clearly treated as she was a problem. And even when the commander of of this squadron of Shadow Wing, it's the 204th or whatever. Anyway, he tries to like cover for her, but then he just yells at the guy afterwards saying, no, she was wrong. It doesn't matter what she did, and yeah, I was very, very pleased with that. And grandmother, of course, the character you mentioned, she was in Alphabet Squadron, and we know her ultimate demise in that. But none of these other characters, as good as they were in Alphabet Squadron.
Right.
I get the sense that they're probably going to appear in one of the future books of this trilogy, of the Alphabet Squadron trilogy. That's my guess, because we do get like an end story that has what's her name, Erica Quell from from Alphabet Squadron. She is in these comic books at one point, but she's like just another part of Shadow Wing.
Yeah, it's just kind of like a moment in passing.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Which is kind of like, when you think about it, kind of what you would expect with two stories that were probably being written at the same time.
Yeah. And actually, when I was reading this, it instantly came to mind for me that Alphabet Squadron should have been a comic book. If it was a comic book, it probably would have been great because you would have seen the action more.
Right.
And I've said this for decades now, literally, that Star Wars works better as comic books than it does novels. And Star Trek, its main competitor, is the opposite truth, where I think Star Trek works better as novels and not so well as comic books. But Star Wars is just so visual that, it made me want Alphabet Squadron as a comic book instead of as what we got. Because this series, which is, again, tied in clearly, worked so much better as a comic book. It just really, really worked.
Yeah, I think that's definitely fair. I mean, even back in the day with the Timothy Zahn, the original Thrawn trilogy, you had, tie-in stuff with like, again, the RPG where like you could visualize all the new ships and stuff that they were talking about, and they had images of the characters and whatnot, and like actually those books had a really strong kind of comic book vibe to them. And so, you could have those as a companion with the book, and it really fit well.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. In fact, without those, I wonder. Well, we'll talk about the novels later on, but I agree with you. I think that's a great point to bring up. So this is. I mean, I wouldn't call it the strongest miniseries that Marvel's done for Star Wars, but it certainly wasn't bad, and ended up far better than I was expecting it. Especially two issues deep. When it got to the fifth issue, I was very pleased with what I got. Would you feel the same?
Absolutely. I mean, and the other thing that concerned me is like they seem to be doing a tie-in with the Han Solo Cadet series, which was not that great in my opinion. But that turned out to not really be a huge. That didn't actually end up being a detractor in this series at all.
Right, and you didn't really need to know anything about that. Like, I mean, it was just a very tenuous connection. It wasn't anything serious.
Yeah, it was just one character.
Right. Yeah, so I liked it a lot, and I wouldn't mind if they wanted to do another miniseries with with the characters that survived. Even when they brought in, because people start dying off in this, which is nice for there to be some fucking consequences. They bring in like these two, brand spanking new cadets, and one of them just totally fucks up. And I even that was really quickly done but well done characterization that I want to see more of. So if they want to do more miniseries, or if they're going to bring these characters into the Alphabet Squadron books, maybe that trilogy will get good. I don't know.
We'll see. Yeah, they definitely left it open for more in the future. This series that if I have any kind of complaints about it is that it doesn't really have any kind of conclusion to it.
True. Yeah. No, that's true. It just kind of stops.
Yeah.
And again, I think they wanted you to go off and read the Alphabet Squadron book after it was done, but yeah, it did just kind of stop and didn't really have any tight conclusion to it. So the Adventures of Shadow Wing, I'm sure we're going to see, or I hope that we see more of that in the future. So if you're good, I think we can wrap up the comic book segment of the show, and we can get into.
That covers everything, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think we've got it. We've licked everything that's out there, except for there is the Galaxy's Edge comic, which did end. But let's just put it that we will review that. Just like at some point we will review the solo comics that all the different ones. Go ahead.
I think Brian and I are going to do sort of like a comprehensive Galaxy Edge, review at some point.
Yeah, because the Black Spire book came out as well, which I started reading that, and I don't know. Go ahead.
And it like I don't live very far from Disneyland, so I at some point should probably go and check it out. So like at some point Brian and I will have a comprehensive review of Galaxy Edge, not just the comic books, but books and the attraction itself.
Yeah, we'll cover everything here at some point. Though, bringing it up, I mean, I hear mixed things. Now, they just was a Smuggler's Run or something. They just opened up some new ride or event at Galaxy's Edge today.
They announced that they're going to be doing a new ride. The Smugglers One has been open since the beginning, and then Galaxy's Edge in Orlando just opened.
Oh, maybe that's where the lines are.
Yeah. They were a couple of months behind Anaheim.
Right. Yeah, but I've heard that that it's not doing the business they were expecting at all.
Yeah. Well, it's all economics, in my opinion, because they drastically raised the prices, not just on the day passes, but on the monthly pass holders, and they also cut back on the number of days that the monthly pass holders could go to visit the park. So I really think, and not only that, I think a lot of people were expecting Galaxy's Edge just to be so crazy and crowded, myself included, that we decided to stay away. Yeah. We decided to stay away. So, in some ways, they might have been a victim of their own success.
Yeah. No, and I mean, then that kind of thing at events and theme parks and all that, I mean, that does occur where people are like, oh, the lines are going to be crazy, and everybody thinks that, so nobody actually goes.
And here again, if when they're raising prices, it's like person's thinking, quite wisely, in my opinion, you want to get the best value for your money, and you don't want to go to a time when, you're crowded and rubbing up against a bunch of other people and just are not going to have an enjoyable experience. So I completely understand that viewpoint.
Yeah, and just quick, I don't know. I don't know that many people. I mean, there's the role playing crowd, and I know you're very familiar with this sort of thing, far more than even me. I know there's people who can do this sort of thing, but you're supposed to go into that, and you are supposed to get lost in the Star Wars universe. You are a part of the Star Wars universe, and I just don't know that many people that can really pull that off, that could even do that. Mentally, that could play that game. Go ahead.
Yeah, I could think of one friend that we have in common that's actually been several times.
Okay.
The funny thing is you're supposed to go in and sort of be a part of this universe, but they strictly forbid any kind of cosplay.
Right.
You have to do this thing I think they call it bounding, where you kind of wear everyday clothes, but you kind of dress up in a way that's sort of vaguely Star Wars-ish looking, and you can kind of get away with it. But any kind of explicit cosplay where you're wearing as something that's identified as a costume, that's completely forbidden in the park.
That is very interesting. Yeah. Well, we'll cover this whole thing at some point, and we won't bring any thermal detonator Coca-Colas out with us either, because
I knew that was going to happen from the beginning. I mean, it was so.
The TSA saying no, you can't bring these with you.
I was even making jokes on Twitter about how, people are going to walk out of the park with these hand grenade looking bottles and get shot by the Anaheim PD because the Anaheim PD is so freaking trigger happy.
Oh yeah. I mean, just about every police department in California is trigger happy. I mean, and
Anaheim has a bad reputation in Southern California as being particularly notorious for shooting people. So I mean, I was if it was going to happen anywhere, it was going to happen there.
Yeah, they really dropped the detonator. I mean, the ball on that one. They fucked that up. That's so funny. Yeah. Well, anyway, why don't we go ahead? Why don't we get into some? We could talk about. There was one trailer I think that came out well before D23, and then we could start talking about some D23 news. So the first trailer that we got, and again, I think this came out before D23 even started. That was the trailer for Star Wars Resistance, which we also just found out that will end after only its second season, which I don't know that that's necessarily a surprise. Maybe it was just because it was something created before the deal with Disney Plus, and yet they didn't want to shift everything over to Disney Plus like in season 3. I don't know. It does seem kind of odd that it's only ending after season 2. We figured we'd at least get 3 or 4 seasons, much like Rebels or any other Star Wars cartoon. Right. But the trailer, I thought this looked pretty good. It starts October 6th. It'll pick back up then. I don't know how many episodes exactly we're supposed to get more of it. But the trailer did what a lot of Star Wars trailers can do, is make things look very, very dark and exciting. Whether or not this kid show is actually going to be dark and exciting in season 2, I don't know. But one of our main critiques, I feel like, it looks like it got a response, which was, where are the aces? And it looks like we're going to get, they're not going to be racing, but the aces are going to be major players in season 2, or at least that's what it appears. At least we heard Griff Halloran say more than 2 words.
Right.
So,
barely.
You
know what? He might have actually said more words in that trailer than all the words he said in the first season.
No, I think he did. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was the character we were wanting to hear from,
Right.
And yeah. But I mean, I liked what I saw. I don't, I'm not going to judge too much by a trailer here because,
of course,
again, we encountered this with Rebels as well, where it looked like, holy shit, this season's going to be nonstop intense. And while there's plenty of intense moments, and Rebels is a great series, a lot of times I think the trailers delivered a lot more hype than what its actual season would do. So I'm, cautiously optimistic about season 2 of Resistance. How about you? What are your thoughts, Rob?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's probably a smart call on just getting the 2 seasons being largely a factor. Well, probably 2 factors: the Disney Plus issue, which is it makes sense that that's not they wouldn't transition that series over to their new channel, so they probably want to start something brand new.
Right.
And not only that, I have a feeling that just the numbers really aren't there from season 1. I don't think it really caught on the way that they thought it would.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that. I imagine that it's just not like blowing it up in the ratings. I mean, again, they did those series of shorts when they did like a mid-season break or whatever with season 1. And I mean, they didn't promote that shit at all. The shorts that they put on like the YouTube Kids channel or whatever. And it's almost like it was just an afterthought. It's like, well, we got it. We'll put it out there, and whoever gives a shit will actually see it because nobody's watching this. I mean, it sort of felt that way. I agree with you, but continue. Did you have any thoughts on the trailer overall?
Like I said, I didn't see anything that was surprising other than one thing, and it looks like that more than likely Kaz's father survived the destruction of the Hosnian Prime, because I could have sworn we saw him in there, and of course we saw Hosnian Prime get destroyed in season 1. So supposedly, I get Kaz thought his parents were dead, and it looks like at least his father probably survived.
Right. Yeah, that
was really the only surprise in the trailer that I can think of.
Yeah. But I mean, it's very action packed. I don't know. There's a lot of starfighters going around. I mean, that works for me.
Right. Which is what you want to see in a trailer.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I mean, are you feeling the same? Cautiously optimistic?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not holding my breath by any means, but I think we had some theories when we did our season 1 review that probably aren't going to pan out, which I thought would have been exciting, but. It looks like from what we've seen so far that things are going to progress in somewhat a predictable manner, which is kind of my feeling overall of Resistance.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I am surprised. Now, out of D23, I think we did learn. Here's the funny thing. I initially thought that Clone Wars, the new season of Clone Wars that's going to be on Disney Plus, that was supposed to launch on November 12th as well. I'm pretty sure I read that in the news, but now they're saying that won't premiere until February of 2020. I'm kind of surprised there's no announcement of another animated show with knowing that Resistance is ending, with season 2. Because I thought they had a couple animated ideas in the works that Filoni was working on, but I don't know. I don't know what the deal is with that.
Yeah, I think there's probably a reason for that, and at least in terms of Clone Wars, that show is such an intensive production, or at least the original was, in terms of production values and the amount of talent it took to get every episode out. So it doesn't surprise me that was delayed, and it may be that definitely it feels like that Resistance was kind of a step back from production values of Rebels, and Rebels was even kind of a scaling back from the amount of money that they were spending on the Clone Wars. So I'm hoping that this is the sign that they're saying, this is actually hurting us in terms of the kind of return that we're getting on viewership, scaling back like this. So hopefully any animated series they do in the future, it has the kind of production values, at least that we had in Rebels, if not Clone Wars.
Yeah, I agree.
And that'll definitely delay any kind of plans that they have.
Yeah, definitely a time-intensive form of animation if you're going to go to that level. Yeah, I agree with you. I imagine we'll get something at some point. There's certainly plenty of things coming down the pike. In fact, maybe something that I think has excited a lot of people, even people who might not have been so hot about the prequels. Most people agree. So if we want to shift to some of what was talked about at D23, we can start breaking that down.
Mm-hmm.
Most people agree with the prequels that at least one good thing out of it was Ewan McGregor's performance as Obi-Wan Kenobi. Whether people like those movies or not, they are definitely on board with, no, he was a great fucking Obi-Wan. And I agree with that as well. Of course, I also love those movies. But a major announcement that we got, and there was some leak of it ahead of time, because there was news going around ahead of D23 that, oh yeah, they are going to do an Obi-Wan TV show. And that's exactly probably the biggest announcement to come out of D23. And Ewan McGregor was there standing on the stage with Kathleen Kennedy, the whole thing. And I think production might start in 2020, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
But we are getting an Obi-Wan TV show. As far as how many seasons we're going to get, we don't know. Like, we know The Mandalorian now already is getting a season 2 because Jon Favreau's writing it. We don't know the length of any of this, but I'm going to say I was pleased, with the announcement. Of course, originally, or I think and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Rob. I mean, it seemed pretty solid that they said they were going to do a Obi-Wan movie, like a Star Wars story movie, but then they backpedaled off of that after Solo, tanked. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think there was any official word on an Obi-Wan movie. There was talk of, certainly a lot of rumors about an Obi-Wan movie. I think that some people attached to Lucasfilm said that, they were considering this stuff, but I don't, I think most people just assumed that it was going to be a movie. I personally would have preferred it to be a movie. I think it's going to be a bit of, a stretch to see how much the material they can get out of, Obi-Wan being on Tatooine. We've talked about this before, how, they've done comic books about that. And it's kind of hard to see, how they're going to be able to do this show and not retread on some of that same sort of, material that they've done before in other media. And without them going off of Tatooine, that is.
Yeah. Which, I mean, I'm open. I think it's a good bet we're going to get off of Tatooine, even though, here's the thing. So Bob Iger made it very clear that on Disney Plus, and there's been a lot of news around Disney Plus that has come out, but, and people have even reviewed the UI of it and everything and what's there. That's already getting demoed because that's going to launch November 12th, which is coming up hot. Bob Iger has said that while they might do movies on Disney Plus, they're not going to do these $100 million plus productions on Disney Plus. So there are budgetary constraints on doing things on Disney Plus that have to make sense. So, I mean, maybe we could have gotten an Obi-Wan movie there, but basically Iger's comments make me think that everything has to be kind of smaller scale on Disney Plus. And so I wouldn't be surprised saying that. I wouldn't be surprised if it stayed on Tatooine because that's a pretty small scale. But then at the same time, I don't know that there's any restriction in the canon that says that Obi-Wan didn't leave Tatooine at some point. In fact, some people have brought up, maybe pretty accurately, that Darth Vader's not surprised that Obi-Wan's alive. And that basically there's a point where Obi-Wan must have encountered Darth Vader before A New Hope. I mean, what are your thoughts on that, Rob?
That's certainly a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that with this, now that you're talking about terms of scale, I wouldn't be surprised if this turns out being sort of like a limited series as opposed to an actual television series like The Mandalorian is.
Right.
So maybe we'll get something like, I don't know, like 4 1-hour TV movie-esque
Sure.
sort of movies, like not yeah, more of like a made-for-TV movie that, so like you used to do what they used to call back in the day a miniseries.
Yeah, where it's like 4 to 6 episodes instead of like 12 to 22. Yeah,
right.
exactly.
And you string it all together and you end up getting something like, a 6 to 8 hour movie.
Yeah, yeah. Which, I mean, a lot of like these, now the TV shows on average seem to be like 13 episodes a pop. Those feel like, and you hear it from the actors themselves, where they, in Hollywood, where they say, TV's in a golden age, and basically now you're because of like Game of Thrones and serialized storytelling, you basically get to make a 13-hour movie now, you
Right.
know. But yeah, something even shorter, where it was like 4 to 6 episodes, I'd be all right with that too. Yeah, I mean, how do you feel about it? Like, I mean, did this excite you when you heard it, or were you like, eh? I mean, what did you think?
Well, I kind of, it was like you said, it kind of got leaked before the actual official announcement, and I was really back and forth on it because my initial reaction was like, this is more bullshit.
Yeah,
because we've heard it all before. I mean, the Obi-Wan, movie rumors have been floating around literally for years now.
Yeah.
And so, and not only that, they must have cinched this deal in short order because the word is that Ewan McGregor didn't even have a contract when that leak came out.
Right.
So they must have put ink to the paper just right before D23.
Yeah.
So that was the part that kind of really surprised me was, we had this leak and I was kind of like, okay, yeah, I'll believe it when I see it. And, I was more doubtful when I heard that, McGregor had actually made a comment to someone that there was no contract yet. And then we'd come to D23 just a few days later after this rumor, and it's actually a real thing. So that was surprising in terms of how it came about that quickly.
Yeah, no, I agree. But I mean, like, you're down for this? You think it's gonna?
Yeah. I mean, like I said before, I would have preferred that if it was a movie. Like, I think it would have worked better as a regular 2-hour format movie. But yeah, if they turn this, if it ends up being something more like a miniseries, I think that would really work. Where I really start having questions is if this is an ongoing series. If they tried to do like 12 episodes a year, do multiple years. For one, I just don't see Ewan McGregor being tied down to any project for that long. I find it hard to believe.
Yeah, I do expect to see Jimmy Smits get signed on here pretty quick. That's sort of like the next name that I expect for him to be as Bail Organa, because you get that hint in Rogue One that like he knows who he needs to talk to, and he knows he's out there and all this. So I'm expecting that to kind of be the next big name. I think there's places we could go with this. I mean, and I'd love to see Liam Neeson get signed on, and let's have some Force Ghost action, with Qui-Gon. We certainly get plenty of hints of that. Yeah,
that definitely get me really excited.
Yeah, I think that might be the smartest move they can do, is involve Qui-Gon as a character in the series.
Right. Yeah.
And even if it was something, I wouldn't mind if it was a very abstract show of Obi-Wan exploring the nature of the Force, or like the afterlife and all this.
Right.
Like, just make it wild. I don't know, go all Twin Peaks with it or some shit. Like, I'd be all right with that.
Right. Yeah.
And I think Star Wars needs that, because something I think we're kind of hint at later on is I don't know. I don't feel like there's enough depth to what's going on with what Disney has done with Star Wars so far. Like, I don't feel like I've really learned anything new. And I'd love a show that gives me something like, wow, this really affects the entire galaxy.
Yeah. This would be a really good way to sideload some more Darth Maul stuff like we got in the Han Solo movie, because we know the two eventually have a confrontation like in Rebels, but Maul's been hunting Obi-Wan for years and years, and you don't necessarily have to have them face off against one another in this series, but you could definitely have part of Maul's hunt for Obi-Wan be part of it. Whereas you have, two concurrent storylines, one about Darth Maul and another one about Obi-Wan.
Oh, I think, yeah, actually you raise a great point, and here's a great storyline that I would run with. Bring Kira into it.
Yeah.
And in fact, have Obi-Wan kill Kira, and boy, that'll be fucked up when he's riding around on the Millennium Falcon. That in A New Hope, I think that would change shit big time. Yeah, because then he's still dealing with Darth Maul because Kira kind of works for Darth Maul, right?
Right.
But then he doesn't have to actually have the face-off, even though he's still dealing with Maul's tendrils in the galaxy. Right. That's a great idea. Yeah. I would love to see that. So I think there's a lot of possibilities with this. I'm on board. I think there's a lot of stories they really could tell, but yeah, I agree with you though. Overall, though, too, I wouldn't have minded if it was just a movie or even a trilogy. That would have been all right.
Right.
So, anyway, want to move on to some other news from D23?
Let's do it.
So the other bit of business that we got really were a couple of full-on trailers that everybody was talking about. Of course, there was the poster for The Mandalorian, but I don't know that that's even something to really talk about because we did finally get a full-on some odd 2-minute trailer for this show. And now this isn't, correct me if I'm wrong, this isn't the trailer that got shown, right? No. It's not the same one. Yeah,
because that got leaked out, and I think we've both seen that. And this has elements of that, but it isn't the same exact trailer.
Right. So in this trailer, link is in the show notes for all this stuff, folks, if you want to check it out for yourself, if you, for some reason, have not seen it yet. But they're already in the millions and millions of views on each of these videos. But the Mandalorian trailer, you get to see Carl Weathers, great. You get to see Gina Carano. You got to see her just for a second. This is very short stuff, very simplistic music playing through it that I think works very well. You did get to see what's his name at the end there. No, I can't think of his name. The older guy.
I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
Him.
And I like that they used I like that they used Werner Herzog to basically narrate the trailer.
Yes. Yeah, and that was a
good call.
Yeah, I agree. You definitely got a feel, I think, for where the show is kind of going. We got to see IG-88, which I thought was one of the highlights of that.
Yeah, that was
the trailer.
Awesome.
Because seeing IG-88 just like blasting around and twisting was so fucking badass. I walked away from that trailer not like super excited, but I was like, okay, this is what I'm looking for. Like this felt right. And give me some thoughts on it, Rob.
Well, and almost to like stark contrast of what you were talking about with Bob Iger's comments, about keeping the scale this small. Already, like the scale and the production values on this look way better than 90% of what's on TV right now.
Yeah.
Game of Thrones included.
No, you're right on that. Granted, this is I think this is Disney Plus's like flagship proof of concept content, this is going to sell people. So I wouldn't be surprised if Bob Iger went a little bit more money on this one. Or also Jon Favreau, he's really into the production side of things and is knee deep in developing new technologies to make this shit work. That they might, because I read an article, it was a great, go ahead.
Yeah, not even just new technology, but I read the same article, and it was a lot of it was about kind of like bringing back older technologies and bring it into the modern era.
The one in Hollywood Reporter there,
yeah. Because I don't know if you knew this, but like the shots of the Mandalorian ship, that's an actual model. That's not CGI.
Amazing. Yeah, I didn't know that. Yeah, that's amazing.
And there was actually a video. I don't remember where I saw it, but they talked about the process they went through it, because the first thing they did when they were doing concept development on this series was they created what's called a maquette, which is basically a sort of like a primitive model. And once people saw this, and people started saying, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we actually did like an actual model for the show, and broke out some motion control equipment, and that's what they actually did.
Yeah.
And they added CGI elements and surge, in terms of like the engine glow and like obviously like the blaster fire and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, they brought back a whole lot of that stuff back, and from what I hear, it's really kind of reignited sort of like the interest in doing practical effects and visual effects for ILM, because a lot of the people that kind of like have come into ILM within like just the last 20 years have all dealt with the digital realm, and they kind of missed out on a lot of like the practical model work. And so a lot of people like that came into that were wanting to do that from the beginning, and now they're getting the opportunity to do it again with some of this Disney Plus stuff, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah, the other thing that Star Wars in general, I know certainly with Rogue One was pioneering, was like these display screens. And I think in the Hollywood Reporter article, Jon Favreau was talking about those as well, where you can see what's happening. It's not just blue screen. Like in Rogue One, if you watch the making documentary for Rogue One, you see where they're sitting in the X-Wing cockpit, and they can actually see like action happening around them on these screens. And I think that's solving another issue of where actors, was it Christopher Lee who like broke down crying? Maybe it was during Lord of the Rings, or maybe it was episode 2, where he broke down crying because he just hated acting to a blue screen. Like he couldn't deliver.
Yeah,
he felt like he couldn't deliver.
Well, I remember Natalie Portman had a lot of those problems too, especially in episode 2, especially in that sequence near the end of the movie where they're on Genosha and they're going through the factory.
Yeah.
And like if you see the behind the scenes stuff where she's like having to, duck and dive and all these different things with just like blue colored sticks and stuff. And it is really, kind of for an actor, I could see how that'd be a big letdown.
Yeah. So there's very much a renaissance of effects being done as far as this goes. So maybe they've figured out ways to keep like the cost down and all of it. And they've got that licked, which isn't, and that's the history of Star Wars, right? Because Star Wars, the cameras that they'd used for A New Hope, they got for like pennies on the dollar because they were an older style camera that they used with a different like millimeter or whatever it was. I forget the exact details on it, but I remember that's how they were able partly to do that for 10 million, was because they bought up all these old cameras and just used them consistently across the production. So this idea of bringing back older technology, maybe even to cut cost at points, but also to make something look maybe more legit or whatever. Again, that's just part and parcel with Star Wars. It's always innovating. So Favreau, this is a big deal. The trailer, I'm trying to think of, the IG-88 part was really huge for that. That put it over the top for me. I thought everything looked really, really solid. I love seeing a Twi'leki woman. That was great. I'm like, oh, good. We get actual like characters or creatures from the original trilogy instead of this constant remake shit from JJ.
I know a lot of people got excited about that character, not just because of being a Twi'lek, too, because of the actress as well.
Do you know who the actress is?
She plays some major characters in both Harry Potter and Game of Thrones.
Oh, okay. All right. That makes,
I know that's kind of like outside of some of our interests, but I know people who are really into both of those things that got really excited when they saw her.
Yeah, that's funny because those two franchises, those aren't me. Like
I know. Yeah,
they're a complete blind spot. For me.
But there's plenty of crossover between those franchises and people who like Star Wars and all, and that's fine. Love what you love and love it unabashedly. That's fine.
Yeah, no, good for them. I think that's great. Everything else. I think we saw Death Troopers in that. So there's a great collection of Star Wars history in this, not just Disney stuff. And the music that was playing during it, I don't know if that's reflective of what we're actually going to get in the show, but I liked what I heard. It was kind of subdued, but it was cool. Yeah, same. I agree. I do hope it is. Overall, here was actually what I think was the most important part of the trailer. And that is, there's a point where the Mandalorian character is using the rope to bring a guy through this circular door that starts closing up.
Yes.
And it's very clear.
I know
It's like
exactly
the
what you're
iris
talking-
on the Stargate. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, I was thinking about the iris on the ducks in the movie Alien.
Oh, yeah, that too. Yeah, good night. Yeah, right. But it's very clear it's going to cut this guy in half.
Right, or cut his head off. Looks like it's going to
Yeah,
cut his head off. Yeah.
right. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, okay. And then I breathed because I was like, okay, this is for grown-ups now. This is good. I was so fucking happy about that. You know,
not
I was
only
like,
that. I mean, like the trailer starts off with like stormtrooper helmets on a pike.
yeah.
Like that right away kind of like just set the tone right there. And I'm like, okay, yeah, we're getting serious now.
Yeah. This is going to be a very brutal place, and we need that. There can be all the Star Wars Resistance and kid stuff in all the world, all over the place. That's fine, but for one age demographic, please, you gotta please us, like just once. You know, where yeah, okay, this can be a bit more grown up. And I think probably because they have such control and they can set up parental controls within Disney Plus, they probably feel like they can get away with that with investors, saying that, yeah, we can keep this away from kids if we need to, right. Or at least make sure the parents are fucking there.
Yeah. But I completely agree with you. I mean, this is definitely like the kind of fan service that we need, as to opposed to maybe some other kind of fan service that we're going to talk about later on.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, any other thoughts you want to share on The Mandalorian? I mean, I'm certainly excited.
Yeah, me too.
I felt good after seeing that trailer. So anything else on that?
Yeah, no, like I said, I got to see the leaked footage from what was it, Celebration or something, and I was already excited. I was already excited from that. And
yeah, it was at Celebration.
This is basically continuing to meet my expectations, is what I would say. And so yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to this.
Yeah, same here. So this could be the thing that really does save Star Wars, because I think a lot of people are really falling away right now, especially for a lot of reasons. But anyway, why don't we go ahead and get into the other bit of well, it's not really a trailer, it's kind of a quasi trailer. Yeah. For episode 9. This definitely got a lot of people talking, maybe more so even than The Mandalorian. Right. And it starts off, it's about 2 minutes long. The first half of it is basically a rehash montage of the history of Star Wars, within universe. You do have Mark Hamill or Luke Skywalker starting to say, "We've taught you all you know," or we taught you everything we know, from the actual episode 9 teaser trailer. And then it goes into some very, very new footage. I mean, and there's one point that everybody was kind of talking about, but certainly you get a lot of action in this. You get some different Rey lightsaber action with her blue lightsaber. You get to see her fighting Kylo Ren on what some people are theorizing is the Death Star 2.
Yeah, well, I think that's fairly certain, because I mean, you could see one of the gun turrets in the background from the Death Star. So yeah. If it's not the Death Star 2, it's at least a Death Star.
Yeah, which was really cool. Get some more of Leia, just briefly, but you do get some more of that. But I mean, we might as well get to it. The big thing that everybody was talking about is that at the very end of this clip is what is known as hashtag Dark Rey. Yeah. And you are getting Daisy Ridley in a black cloak, looking very much like Anakin Skywalker at the end of episode 3, after he's become Darth Vader, before he's a robot though. And she's holding like a lightsaber fork or skewer that's red bladed, but then it folds down into a double bladed lightsaber. And everybody's talking about this, and I mean, it just went wild on Twitter. Even I shared about it. I thought that, well, anyway, there's some very sexy comments that were made that I enjoyed from other ladies, but about it. There's this one female author I know. She wrote. She said it was shared the picture of Dark Ray, and I'll just say it. She said something like Dark Ray told me to get on my or called me a slut and told me to get on my knees and get on all fours. Yeah. You know, and as long as it's a gal saying it, great. Right on. That's so hot. Anyway, sorry.
Even the replies to that were pretty good because he had some other women saying yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Which I love it, and I mean, first off, I'll say this. I'm sure this is a degree of fan service because JJ had to have heard a lot of people wanted Ray to turn to the dark side, or at least they were expecting it.
Yeah, there was that piece of really, really popular fan art that came out, I think, shortly after The Force Awakens, or it might have been just before The Last Jedi, where it kind of like it showed a dark Ray and a light Kylo Ren.
Yeah.
And she basically like looked exactly like she did in this trailer.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it is clearly fan service.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, admittedly, I mean, as much as people asked or expected or wanted it, whatever, people instantly came up and said, well, this is just some vision. Like, it's not actually a moment in that, like, Ray's not actually going to turn to the dark side.
Right.
I'll admit, I think that's, and I want your gauge, but I mean, that's probably likely.
Yeah.
As much as I wish it were the opposite,
right.
As much as I want it to be absolutely fucking real and it could end with her just like offing everybody, that'd be fine. But yeah, it's probably a vision. I mean, give me your take, Rob.
Yeah, I mean, like the only glimmer of hope was apparently somebody got a quote from Daisy Ridley and she said she was surprised that they put that in the trailer. So maybe there's more to it than people think. We can only hope. But here again, yes, it's more than likely this is Rey's, dark side cave moment.
Yeah, this is her moment on Dagobah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sadly, and I say that, sadly, I think that's what it is. I really wish it would be more. People got to remember, though, like the Last Jedi trailer, the main trailer for the Last Jedi, made it look like Rey was taking Kylo Ren's hand at the end of the trailer and was going to join the dark side. So, I mean, teasing this shit at the end of a trailer is, I mean, now that's just like what they do. Right. And that's kind of annoying, but at the same time, it was pretty hot to see it. I mean, like I even if it is a vision, I dig it. At least we get to see something of it. So I don't know. I mean, I even kind of felt like it looked like they were CGIing a bit over the left side of her face, where it looked kind of blurry. And I wondered if maybe like in the actual movie when we see it, that maybe like there's like half of her face is Rey and half of the face is something else when it's actually in this vision. But I mean, I'm just tossing that out there.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't really notice that myself, but I'll take your word on it.
Yeah, just a thing. But anyway, I mean, what did you think about all of this little? We'll call it a trailer that we got a reveal.
Well, just one more note. I mean, I have to say that lightsaber is totally ridiculous. I'm sorry.
Oh, where it's like two going up the skewer?
The Swiss Army or the scissor saber or whatever you want to call it. I mean, the thing I love most is how quick some of these people with some After Effects skills are coming up with memes, like right after the trailer hits. And I'm seeing a GIF on Twitter, and it's literally the Swiss Army saber, where she pops it out, and there's like a saw and some scissors and a comb or something. I mean, I love it. It's great.
Yeah. I mean, they did it with Kylo Ren too, right? With Force Awakens, and like I remember one where it's him holding the lightsaber and pointing down, and it's a menorah that comes out.
Yes, I was thinking the same thing. Yeah, the menorah.
Yeah, so that's fair, and I agree. It is ridiculous. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's a totally impractical weapon, like being held in the position that you initially see it in. I mean, like there's no way that's going to work as an actual weapon.
Yeah. No, I agree. But I mean, what else did you think about it? I mean, what were your takeaways?
Like that was really like the biggest take. I mean, really, that was really the only thing to talk about. Because the stuff that we've seen, the other stuff we can see in the trailer is kind of stuff that we've seen in the previous trailer, just from like a different angle.
Yeah.
It is nice to see the whole Resistance era gang together.
Yes.
That's nice. In fact, it looks like they're going to have more than one adventure. I guess one other thing that's worthy of comment is the Star Destroyers.
Yeah, as soon as you said it, it clicked. Yeah, in the lightning, that was nuts. That was like, whoa.
I mean, that was really impressive looking. Although, like, I'm already trying to, like, logic this out in my head, and it's not working. Like, how the Emperor kept that a secret.
Yeah. I mean, unless they're First Order ships, some like.
Yeah, but they were like early Imperial era Star Destroyers. I mean, you could tell because of the radar on the tower. Because in A New Hope they had it in the up position where it kind of looks like an X with two bars across the top of it.
Yeah.
And then later on, The Empire Strikes Back, they kind of flipped it down, and that's supposed to be like how you differentiate an Imperial Class 1 Star Destroyer from an Imperial Class 2 Star Destroyer. So these are early era Imperial Star Destroyers that, we have to assume that Palpatine hid away somehow and kept a secret. I'm just like, how do you keep something that big a secret, though? Like, they did something similar in the Thrawn trilogy with the Dark Fleet, the Dark Force Fleet. Yeah. But the only reason that worked was because they had the hyperdrives slaved rig tied all into one computer, and they all jumped off into some unknown place in hyperspace all at once by accident. Whereas this is very intentional, like sort of like fleet that they've tried to hide.
Yeah, a part of me wonders if, I mean, so and like in Dark Empire, you had where there was that giant fleet that was hid like in the inner core of the galaxy, like near Biss. Yeah, exactly. And there were like that Eclipse class Star Destroyer that was just a fucking monstrous, black thing. But I mean, the one place you could hide it maybe would be like the Maw. And I wonder if it'd be cool if they brought that in because we got to see it in Solo, but I agree with you. The logistics of this is odd. Yeah.
Well, like the hiding it in a location isn't the problem for me. It's just like, how do you keep, like, it took a lot of manpower to put all those ships there.
Yeah.
And how do you keep a conspiracy that big secret from, just the internal empire itself and from all the admirals and the generals and the rank and file and the politicians? That's a huge, pretty hard secret to keep.
Yeah. Well, I'll be curious to see what like their origin story is, where the hell where all these come from. But it was an awesome shot. You're totally right. That shot and the Dark Ray. I mean, those are the two takeaways. I agree with you. Overall, I mean, seeing Ray like tossing a lightsaber around and cutting up a bunch of trees was kind of cool, but it wasn't the biggest thing. Yeah.
And you got to see a training boat, which I mean, here again, another callback to the original trilogy.
Yeah, and we did get more of Palpatine's voice in that, right? He's saying journey, like he says, like your journey.
Yeah, your destiny or your journey is coming to an end. Yeah.
I get the sense that if they do a full-on trailer, it's probably going to reveal a lot. And maybe, I don't know, maybe they can't do like a really slick, I mean, I'm sure they can pull one off, but maybe they can't do a really slick trailer that isn't too much of a lie, because it would be so easy to reveal so much with whatever, is in this movie. I don't know.
Yeah. I think really, like, the only thing they absolutely have to do in a final trailer is we have to see Palpatine.
Yeah.
If it's just a glimpse, we have to see him. So far, we've only heard him.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I'm sadly, I'm half expecting him to be like crawling around like Smeagol in like the throne room on the Death Star too. That's half what I'm expecting. Because I just don't know what they're going to do with this.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. Well.
Yeah, that would be such a huge disservice. I can't imagine them doing that because I mean, if you're setting him up to be like the big baddie of the entire saga,
Yeah.
episodes 1 through 9,
Right.
then you can't do that.
Yeah, you got to give us something more threatening. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Because that's kind
By
of
the
what they
way,
did with Maul when they brought Maul back. Was
Yeah.
he's just like crawling around like Smeagol. Anyway, go ahead.
Did you see the poster?
For episode 9?
Yeah, there was a poster that they came out with that showed Rey and Kylo fighting, and Palpatine's kind of looking over them.
Oh, I did see that. Yes.
Yeah. And the thing I wanted to bring up is like somebody did like a 1985 rendition of that poster, and it looked so great.
Yeah. I saw that too, actually. Yes. Yeah, that was awesome. Yeah. So I mean, does seeing this new footage, does any of it, like, I mean, clearly we saw a couple cool things in it, but does any of it like raise your bar of or like are you expecting this to be better than you did previously? I mean, how do you walk away from it?
I'm still managing my expectations on this, so
Sure.
No, not really. Like I said, I see the whole Dark Ray thing as being 99.9% fan service.
Yeah,
I was almost expecting that. I mean, basically, like I said, they just took that piece of concept fan art that was floating around and just went, okay, how can we dial this up to 11? Well, let's give her a new lightsaber.
Right.
And so that's what that is. And like I said, the other thing with the Star Destroyer fleet, that's cool, but I mean that's not really enough to sort of like, really push up my expectations that much more.
Yeah, no, I agree. I will say though, I kind of hope that, I mean, because these Force visions, there's no time limit on those. They don't have to only go for 30 seconds. Like, fuck, go 10 minutes in the film as a Force vision. I think that'd be awesome. So if they wanted to spend some quality time, with this Dark Ray thing, I think there's a way they could do it, even if it is a vision, and could still deliver much of what I want out of it. Like that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
If there was a vision of, go ahead.
I think that would be great. I don't really see it happening. I think that would really work well with the Obi-Wan series if maybe you did like a 10-15 minute Force vision sequence in that series. That would be the perfect place to do that.
Well, we'll see. So, I mean, same, I'm keeping my expectations a little tempered, but I definitely loved getting to see Dark Ray in some kind of official capacity. That was really, really nice. And I think they knew that they had to do something to appease Last Jedi, or some of the expectations for The Last Jedi, and I think that's what they're very much working on with this. All right, well, do you want to shift gears, get into another segment? Yeah, so let's get into our fan production of the month, which, I mean, could have just as well been that picture that you mentioned, Rob, of where it was a Dark Ray and a light Kylo. But what we have here is a fan film, something that we always enjoy, or as I often like to call them, just independent productions or indie films, because some of them are so goddamn good that, it's almost an insult to just call them a fan film. This one clocks in at about 9 minutes, not one of the longest things in the world, but it's called The Lost Patrol. It's by Rogue Shark Pictures from 2018, one of the more recent ones that I've come to enjoy. And it's pretty simple fare, as in it's it's an X-Wing patrol taking on some TIE fighters. There's Y-Wings there as well, but they're taking on some TIE fighters and doing the business. I personally, as simple as this is, as simple a concept as it is, the effects look, I mean, they're serviceable. They work. The cockpits look great, which was a nice touch. I mean, you only had to build one, and you could use it for a bunch of different people. I liked it. I thought it was just a fun, 9 minutes of, some starfighter action that I thought really, really worked. And I also appreciated because, and if you're like me, who's been watching fan films for a very long time, since like the 90s, where they could even become a thing, they weren't always known for being very diverse. And you have an Asian character, a black female character, multiple female characters in this, an older guy. I mean, I even want to give credit to that. An overweight guy like Porkins, I thought this worked. It was just a nice representation and just fun. I mean, what did you think about The Lost Patrol, Rob?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's pretty simple fare. It's very light on story.
Sure.
So it's not some like some of the past fan films that we've reviewed where it's very heavy on the story.
Hmm.
Um, what this felt like to me and what I think it was is more of like a demo reel, a chance
Yeah,
for
right.
people to show off their talents.
Yeah.
And does that very well, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, you even get a mention of Commander Skywalker, which I thought was
Right.
cool. That was a nice touch. Um, yeah, I mean, sure, I can see that where it felt like a demo reel, but it was just, it was very, very nicely done, and it was, I feel like the casting in it and the presentation in it overall was very intentional, and I appreciated that
Yeah.
because, I mean, I'll just say it, like I believe me, most Star Wars fan films. I mean, it's getting better now, but it used to be. I mean, it was just a bunch of, I'll just say it, just a bunch of white boys, And I
Right.
don't mean to take anything away from their work necessarily, but it's just nice to see this. I mean, you can't imagine the conversations I had back in the day, or a lot of us had back in the day, where it's like, boy, can we get more women in Star Wars? And so and we've applauded Disney for doing that, and I applaud this fan film for doing the same thing, along with much else, or
Yeah,
much
absolutely.
more.
And
Hmm.
like, and don't misunderstand me. I don't use the term demo reel in a derogatory sense at all. I
Right.
mean, some great demo reels have been done. I remember back in college just seeing like just stuff that would blow me away, and it would kind of inspire us to like try and do even better. So. And I hope this kind of serves that purpose as inspiration for other people to kind of up their game with their fan films.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it did show, I think, that you can do very realistic, very good looking. I mean, like when the Y Wings are spinning around, doing their flips and all that, I thought that was well done. I liked that
Yeah,
a lot.
yeah. Well,
I thought
and
those,
and
go ahead.
the other thing I noticed too is, and other people in the comments noticed this as well, is they did their homework with this, and this is something that George Lucas did, and that really worked for Episode 4, the first Star Wars, is that he actually took inspiration from World War II fighter plane footage,
Right.
and matched movements of the X-wings to what the fighter planes were doing in World War II footage, and these people did the same thing, and it really works. I mean, that is very much in the Star Wars ethos, and it looks and feels the way a starfighter battle should look in the Star Wars
Yeah.
universe.
Yeah, so this can be done. Right? An excellent like proof of concept, and a well executed and beautiful proof of
Right.
concept, I think. Yeah, so link is in the show notes for this, to catch it on YouTube. For those that want to, I definitely recommend it. Again, it's 9 minutes, very simple, but it's fun, and doesn't get in the way of any canon. Really, that's another thing that fan films sometimes do, and I appreciate it when they try to steer clear of that.
Right.
So, or like play well within it, I should say. All right, so shall we get to our question of the month then?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it. In fact, I'm going to open this up with an email that we got into Zomia ONE, of course, the network that TFR is on, and I'll read it here because it kind of leads into the that I have for this month. So the email goes like this, quote, "So I've been looking for a podcast to listen to, and I've come across you just recently. I cannot stop listening. Your words stay interesting and entertaining. I wanted to show some thanks for keeping it real and telling it how it should be. A lot of my favorite episodes are your Star Wars ones. Listening to y'all makes me want to know more because I get lost a little when you go through some topics. Because of that, I just started reading the books, which I realize is going to be a lengthy process. I mainly want to say thanks for what you do. Your shows are great, and I am trying to catch up to your new episodes." And can't thank you enough for that. And I'm sure, Rob, you feel the same
Yeah.
way.
I mean, I can't tell you how much I appreciate this. It for me, I got to hear this, when you talked about it on a Q&A,
Yes,
and it really kind of hit at the right moment because I've been kind of having a rough month,
sure.
and this was the pickup that I need, and really I want to thank everybody who listens to this. We have some other listeners that kind of help me out with the terrible situation that I'm dealing with right now, and I can't thank you guys enough. Um, I, I really I don't know how to say it other than thank you. Thank you for being there for me and for us, and for appreciating the show the way you do. You know, like I almost debated, you know, not doing this an episode with Brian this month. And after hearing that, you know, him read that email, it kind of, you know, gave me the you know the confidence and the desire to keep on doing it. So thank you, listener. I really appreciate those comments.
Yeah, yeah. We don't always. I mean, we've gotten feedback on this particular show on TIE Fighter Renegades in the past. We don't always get that, and yeah, I mean, I share all sentiments that Rob just shared, and yeah, it's always great to to hear that, especially because like sometimes like with some of the things that I do, I mean, I know there's demand for a Star Wars show, but I don't always like, hear it and like hear from people like, yeah, no, we love it when you talk about Star Wars. Cause I can be kind of a Debbie Downer, as they say, when it comes to entertainment and Rob just like pours it on when he comes on this show. And so, yeah, it is really great to get that. And yeah, so I really appreciate that email. Something within that email. Do you have more you wanted to share on that, Rob?
No, like I said, just thank you both to the emailer and just to everybody in our audience in general.
Yeah.
And thank you to everybody that helped me out when I needed it. I can't tell you how much it means to me. Thank you.
Yeah. To all the listeners, I mean, you've been there for Rob. I know that. You've been there for me in the past as well. And I just, we can't thank all of you enough. You're the best people in the world, and you really are. So I do feel, just be kind of funny, but I do feel kind of bad that I inspired this person to start reading books, to start reading Star Wars books. No, I mean, that's great. If you want to learn more about it and you want to follow along, like that's dynamite. I was saying to Rob, actually, before we started recording, it's like, holy shit, I want to read like some books reading Star Wars. Okay. So it's kind of funny. Like I'll say this to Ellen sometimes. It's like, oh God, I have to read another Star Wars book, or I have to read. Yeah, it's like sorry, sweetheart, I have to read some Star Trek comics before tomorrow, and she'll just look at me like, oh gee, what a terrible job,
Yeah.
You got, how torturous of you. You have to read Star Trek comics. Oh shit, or you have to listen to a Star Trek book. And it's always she's the best. She's hilarious. But it's anyway. But really, like, there's so much of this out there, and the emailer recognized that, like, it's going to be a lengthy process. Yeah, there's so much. I mean, and for me to keep on top of it all and right now, pulling the curtain back a little bit, Rob and I have talked about doing shows for other franchises, not just Star Trek and Star Wars. But right now, the main two that I can really keep track of is Star Trek and Star Wars, but it's like there's a new book all the time, or a new comic book, and it's fucking hard, and
it is.
And I know, go ahead.
I've even told Brian, when we talk about this show beforehand, like there are some books that I won't read, and Brian will do it, and I'm like, brother, you're taking one for the team, I mean, there's one book in particular where you're talking about, and I'm like, yeah, man, like, reading that must have been like self-inflicted brain damage.
Yeah, of course, that would be Phasma, which, oh boy, anyway, yeah. So, I mean, I'm glad, and I know I've inspired other people over time, and I've read those emails where people have contacted me. Actually, I did them like for Q&As. This is before I even had a Star Wars show, where they're saying, okay, I want to get into reading Star Wars books. Where do I start? And so on. And so I know that this happens, and I'm glad overall, because I like to be able to connect with people over these things, So I appreciate that. But man, yeah, you are in for some of these, especially some of the stuff that Disney's done is pretty rough. Not to say that Star Wars content in the past, like in the 90s and so on, wasn't rough either. But some of this stuff's, you're in for, your patience will be tested.
Yeah.
Just put it that way.
Right.
Okay. And yeah, I mean, it does, because admittedly, like, keeping up with it, because I do these shows, and because I just like to know, like, I just have to have the knowledge, it's a drive in me. it can keep me from getting to the stuff I actually really want to read or really want to experience. Like I'm so far behind, like with comic books and behind on Conan and Power Rangers. Like there's ones I really want to read that I can't keep up with because there's just so much damn Star Trek and Star Wars. But anyway, all of that said, it did make me think of a time where in the 90s, it was actually fairly easy to keep up with a lot of that because everything felt very limited. Like you would do little trilogy series of books. There wasn't a book every month at all for Star Wars. There wasn't an ongoing comic book series by Marvel because Dark Horse was doing it at the time, and they were doing great Star Wars comics, but they were very limited runs that could easily be consumed in a graphic novel format or something along those lines. So it was kind of easier at first in the 90s to keep track and to keep up with all that. And that's a pace that because I started that at a very young age, I was able to keep up with. And I've basically read everything Star Wars. Basically. I mean, I'm sure there's things I've missed. But that's only because I started back then. I cannot imagine trying to even just the New Jedi Order series alone from the old EU was some odd 20 books that you would have to consume. I mean, and that's nuts. Yeah. So that said, it got me thinking, and this is kind of my question of the month, which, were the old, and this is just for the novels, though actually knowing about the comics would be an interesting question as well. But with the old, do you think, is there any measurable way in which the old EU novels do you think they're better than the new canon novels in any way? I mean, there's far less new canon novels than there are old EU novels, so certainly you have a larger pool to choose from. But I mean, do you feel, because you used to read the old EU novels?
Yeah.
Like, do you have a different? Sure. Do you have a different feeling of reading those than you do, say, of the new EU novels?
Oh, absolutely. I think the old EU had a much larger scope than the current books do. I think they were able to basically have, more galaxy-wide, impactful, events. And this was where actually, like everything did matter, whereas, a lot of the, and it is difficult to compare because we didn't have movies back then. So they didn't have to worry about tying movies in with books and comic books and whatnot. So in a way that is kind of unfair to compare the two, but at the same time, I feel like they were able to do more, whereas the current canon of books, I feel like they're restrained a little bit in as to what kind of stories they can tell and how much, their storylines can impact the greater Star Wars universe.
Yeah, I think you're hitting at kind of what I'm feeling with this too, and is kind of the inspiration of the question. Like, just with when Star Wars novels came back with Heir to the Empire, was that 91?
Yeah, it was around there. Yeah, early
something
90s.
Like that. Yeah. We got exactly what everybody wanted, say, out of The Last Jedi. We got Luke Skywalker swinging his fucking lightsaber around, and doing the business. We haven't, there's books, like, what is it? There's Heir to the Jedi, and there's a couple others, but we really haven't gotten a post Return of the Jedi Luke Skywalker kicking ass. Not really, I don't think. Not in any like deep way, and where he's like really saving the entire galaxy, like saving the entire fucking galaxy, which we got eventually with the old EU. You were getting almost once a month. Right. And so, you hit it, that these books don't feel like they are impacting the galaxy the same way the old EU books did, where it was like a galaxy-wide event all the time. I mean, even something like Truce at Bakura, which was right after Return of the Jedi, had to do with the Sister Ruvi or whatever. They were like the new enemy that had to be taken care of. And it was galaxy wide, it just, the scale's not there. And it's a great point to bring up that these books, the new books, have to keep in line with the movies. Right. That's a great point to bring up. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like more was on the line with the old EU books, and the new canon, as good as some of these books are, they just don't have the same level of excitement and, okay, here we go, I'm diving into Star Wars, you know? I mean,
Right.
do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I mean, it basically comes to, like, back in the EU days, you actually had, different levels of canon. You had
Right.
G canon, C canon, all these different things. And basically, like, once you knew the scope of the playground that you had to play in, these authors could do anything like that. Now there's a lot more restrictions on what these authors can do, it feels like.
Mm-hmm.
Well, undoubtedly there are more restrictions. And like I said,
Yeah.
I mean, I to a certain degree, I think it's unfair to compare the two, but at the same time, I do long for those EU days when we got those kind of stories that had a bigger impact and had events that were longer lasting and had more meaning on the novels that were to come in the future. Whereas a lot of the books now really do feel self-contained.
Yeah, no, you're right. They do feel self-contained and they feel safe. They overall feel safe, even
Right.
though I know sometimes something major will happen. But continually, this rule that I've been noticing since 2013 basically is still holding true. That each book, maybe in the last chapter of the book, will give you some nugget of something that matters to the broader galaxy.
Right.
And but that's all you get.
Right.
As
It's just a nugget. And here again, it's something that's kind of left open enough that where if they need to do away with that or reinterpret it in another way that makes it less impactful or relevant, it's easily done.
Yeah. So you raise a great point that it's unfair to kind of compare them, but at the same time, like the feeling is just not, it's just not the same,
No.
And I mean, and it got to the point with the old EU where because I was trying to read everything that it's like, okay, this is just too much. I can't, kind of like I was saying earlier, I can't keep up with this. But at the same time, it was still always fairly, pretty, it was, you knew where you were going into and it was exciting. When you got there, and I don't know that I feel that same excitement, and maybe it's because the books aren't all featuring Han, Leia, and Luke,
Right.
But yeah, it doesn't feel the same. Go ahead.
And who knows, maybe after we finally completed the Skywalker saga, that things will open up a little bit more.
Yeah, I do hope the gloves come off after episode 9 because then there shouldn't be any more secrets. So we know what's going to happen. You got your big movie out. Well, anyway, I think we can wrap this one up. Plenty of news covered, plenty of trailers covered. All links are in the show notes for all of this. I will end it off with, as we always do in every episode of TIE Fighter Renegades. Sometimes we start it off this way. But Rob, how are you feeling about Star Wars right now, baby?
With the Mandalorian and the Clone Wars, I'm feeling really good. I'm excited for what's to come. I'm even, like I said, with everything that we talked about with the potential of the Obi-Wan series. I think there's a lot of good that can come from that. Still, holding back on expectations for episode 9, but willing to be surprised.
Yeah. I will second all of that all the way. Disney Plus is basically the thing that has me excited for Star Wars right now. Episode 9, seeing some interesting things, but we'll just have to see it when it comes out to know.
Is that everything? Something that you thought you would say?
I know, Disney has got, I'll just say it quick. Like, The Last Jedi fucking changed everything, and not in a good way. Like, because now all expectations are tempered. Like, like there is no such thing as, and I never felt this way with the prequels. There's no such real thing as like just unabashed excitement for something Star Wars anymore, because they can fuck it up really, really hard. Or even if they're not fucking it up, they can do what isn't what's being asked for. Yeah. So anyway, go ahead.
It's so weird because of all the other news that's come out of D23 with all these different Marvel shows that they're going to be doing, which I am not excited about at all.
Yeah.
Period. Same. If anything, they dampen my excitement for Disney Plus as a service.
Agreed.
But I'm still really excited about Clone Wars and Mandalorian. So that's really, I mean, they've already got me. they don't have to do anything else at this point. They've got my money.
yeah, no, same here. And the Obi-Wan series and even the Cassian Andor series, I'm there. Like, it sounds great. Let's do it, So anyway, all right, well, that is it. We are feeling good about Star Wars at the end of August 2019, so I guess D23 did something. And but we'll wrap up TIE Fighter Renegades. Rob, is always just the best time, and we will see all of you on the other side.